He didn't speak much, not because he didn't have anything to say. Malik had more inside him than most kids his age, but because he learned early that in his neighborhood, silence could be armor. Words, when not used carefully, could get you in trouble, could start fights, could invite questions he didn't want to answer. So Malik learned to live quiet, observe, move between the noise like a shadow. And when the world got too loud, he went to the one place where he didn't have to hide, the cracked basketball court behind the school. That court wasn't much, a faded half-circle painted on worn concrete, bent rims that rattled every shot, chain nets that clanged like old keys. It sat between a row of dumpsters and a graffitied brick wall that told stories no one wanted to hear. But to Malik, it was sacred ground, his sanctuary, the only place that listened when he had something to say. He never had a real basketball. The one he used had lost its grip years ago. Its color was closer to gray than orange, and it leaned slightly to one side when it bounced, as if it too carried a weight it couldn't explain. His shoes were hand-me-downs from a cousin who'd long stopped playing. One sole flapped when he ran too fast, like it was trying to take off before he could. But Malik didn't care, because when he stepped on that court, when he gripped that ball, when he looked up at the rim through the glare of a Milwaukee winter sunset, he felt something shift, something inside him unlocked. The world didn't change, but the way he stood in it did. Every night after school, after helping his mom fold laundry or scrub kitchen floors in apartment buildings that smelled of bleach and forgotten dreams, Malik would sneak out and head to the court. He played alone. He practiced footwork drills he saw on YouTube videos, watched sideways on a borrowed phone with a cracked screen and low battery. The Wi-Fi never worked right, but it was enough to buffer a few clips of Giannis Antetokounmpo driving down the lane like a man possessed. To Malik, Giannis wasn't just a player. He was proof. Proof that you could come from nothing and still become something, that you didn't need to be born into privilege to have purpose, that the struggle didn't define you. It refined you. He memorized everything, Giannis's spin move, his Euro step, the way he kept his eyes up, even as defenders closed in. But more than that, Malik studied his face, that wide, honest smile, the quiet way he celebrated, never showboating, the way he spoke about family, sacrifice, and faith in post-game interviews. Giannis didn't play like he wanted to win. He played like he needed to, like every dunk was a prayer answered, and Malik felt that. At school, Malik sat in the back of the classroom. He wasn't dumb, not by a long shot, but school felt like a place built for other kids. Kids who had breakfast, who had notebooks with all the pages, who didn't have to worry about getting home before the streetlights because the neighborhood turned into something else after dark. Teachers liked him, sort of. They said he had potential, but they didn't know what to do with a kid like Malik, a kid who never spoke unless spoken to, who never turned in homework but aced the tests, who read novels in secret but failed group projects because he didn't trust partners to carry their weight. Nobody knew about the notebook. It was small, leather-bound, frayed at the corners. Malik carried it in his backpack everywhere like a second heart. It wasn't a diary exactly, more like letters, to no one, or maybe to someone someday, sometimes to his future self, sometimes to his father, wherever he was, but most often to Giannis. He wrote things he couldn't say out loud, like how it felt to pretend everything was okay, how his mom worked so much she forgot her own birthday, how he once cried during a Bucks game not because they won, but because it reminded him of what joy looked like, what it felt like to want something bigger than survival. One night, after a day that had cracked him open, his mom had come home with bruises on her arms from a tenant who refused to pay rent and refused to be civil. Malik couldn't sleep. He opened the notebook and poured it all out. For the first time, he didn't just write to Giannis, he wrote for him, a letter. He didn't plan it. The words just came, raw, unfiltered. He told Giannis about the court behind the school, about the ball with no grip, about the shoes that tried to fly, about the way watching him play made Malik believe in something, even if he couldn't name it. He didn't ask for anything. No money, no shoes, no ticket to a game. He just said, "Thank you. Thank you for showing up, for being visible, for carrying hope like it was a ball you never dropped." The next morning, He tore the letter from the notebook, folded it carefully. He didn't even write a return address, just, "To Giannis from a kid who sees you." Then he walked 5 blocks to the community center, connected to the Bucks outreach program. No one was there yet, just a cleaning lady who didn't look up when he slipped the envelope into the mailbox by the front door. He walked away without turning back. He didn't tell his mom, didn't tell anyone. He assumed it would be thrown out, lost in a pile of fan mail or never opened at all. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a whisper into the void. One final prayer on concrete. Malik kept going back to the court every night, even when snow fell, even when his fingers turned red and numb from cold. He kept shooting, kept dribbling, kept whispering the name Giannis under his breath, like it was the only word he trusted. Somewhere inside, he'd already decided the world wasn't built for kids like him. But still, something in him refused to stop playing, refused to stop writing, refused to fully give in. He didn't know it yet. But the silence he had learned to live with, the invisibility he wore like skin, was about to be shattered, because someone had read his letter, someone who understood what it meant to be overlooked, to be underestimated, to carry the weight of your whole family on your back and still show up smiling, and that someone was about to change everything. Malik didn't expect anything to come of the letter. That was never the point. He had slipped it into that community mailbox like someone casting a bottle into the ocean. One final attempt. A whisper in the storm, more for himself than for anyone else. Writing it had felt like breathing after holding his breath for too long. Letting it go had felt like exhaling something he didn't know he was carrying. Days passed, then weeks. Life didn't change. The court was still cracked. His shoes were still broken. His mother still worked 2 jobs and barely spoke from exhaustion. His teachers still looked through him with that faint sadness reserved for kids who probably wouldn't make it out. So he returned to routine, school, homework, what little he felt like doing. A few hours helping his mother with cleaning jobs in the evenings. Then always the court, the only constant. It didn't care if he passed or failed, if he smiled or sulked. It was just there, waiting. But something shifted on a Thursday morning. It started like any other day. Malik was slumped at the back of his second-period English class, staring out the window, pretending to take notes while scribbling a sketch of a basketball rim on the edge of his paper. Halfway through the period, there was a knock at the classroom door. Everyone turned. The assistant principal stepped in, murmured something to the teacher, then looked directly at Malik. "Malik Evans, can you come with me, please?" A ripple of whispers followed as he packed his things and followed the administrator out. Malik's stomach tightened. He hadn't done anything. He was sure of it. But anxiety had been his default setting for years. That inner voice that always expected punishment, even in the absence of guilt. They walked in silence down the hallway. Instead of heading toward the main office, they took a left and stopped in front of the school counselor's office. Odd. He hadn't been in there since 8th grade. The door opened. Inside sat a man in a navy suit with a Bucks pin on his lapel, mid-30s, clean-cut, clipboard in hand. Next to him, the school counselor looked nervous, but oddly excited. "Malik," the suited man stood and extended a hand. "I'm Jordan. I work with the Milwaukee Bucks' community outreach team. Mind if we talk for a minute?" Malik blinked. He nodded slowly and sat down. Jordan smiled. "I know this might be weird, but about 3 weeks ago you dropped a letter off at the Bucks Foundation. No return address, no contact info, just a message to Giannis." Malik felt his body freeze. That letter? That letter? Jordan leaned forward. Giannis read it. The words didn't register. They sounded like dialogue from a movie, not something real, not something meant for him. His ears rang. "I mean, he really read it," Jordan went on. "He was in the facility late one night, and someone had tossed the envelope on his locker thinking it was just fan mail. He opened it, read the whole thing." Silence. Then he read it again. Malik's voice, dry and unsure, finally found its way out. "Why?" Jordan's expression softened. Because it felt like his own story. The next few minutes were a blur. Jordan explained that Giannis had shown the letter to the coaching staff, to a few players, to the foundation board. People cried. They were moved. But more than that, They saw something in Malik's words, something raw, honest, quietly powerful. And Giannis wanted to meet him. Malik thought it was a joke, a prank, or a mistake. He asked again, twice, if they were serious. But Jordan only smiled and slid a laminated visitor pass across the desk. "We'd like you to come down to the training facility this Saturday. No cameras, no press, just you and Giannis, one-on-one." The world shifted. That Saturday, Malik barely spoke on the drive over. Jordan picked him up from the school parking lot. His mum didn't come. She had to work, and besides, she didn't fully believe it was real. Malik himself didn't believe it until they pulled into the gated compound, and he saw the Bucks logo painted 20 feet tall on the side of the building. They checked in at the security desk. Malik was handed a visitor badge with his name printed in bold. Then they walked. The facility was clean and massive, too clean, too massive, like stepping into a place built for gods. Polished floors, walls filled with trophies and framed jerseys. It smelled like wood polish and focus. Every person they passed nodded respectfully to Jordan. One of the assistant coaches even patted Malik's shoulder, smiling as if he already knew who he was. Then, in a quiet hallway that led to the practice gym, the door opened. Giannis stood there. Tall didn't begin to describe him. He looked carved from something ancient, but when he smiled, wide and warm and familiar, he shrank the room down to something human. "Malik," he said, his voice soft, unmistakable. Malik didn't move at first. Then somehow his legs carried him forward. Giannis stepped in and hugged him. Not a celebrity hug, not a public hug, a real one, like he'd known him for years. They sat on the edge of the practice court, legs dangling. Giannis waved everyone else away. "I read your letter," he said, every word. Malik couldn't speak. His throat was tight. Giannis didn't push, he just waited. "You reminded me of me," Giannis continued. "When I was your age, no shoes, no food, no hope, just basketball. Just a dream." Malik finally found his voice. "I thought no one would read it." "I'm glad I did," Giannis said. "You don't know how much I needed it." They talked for an hour, about everything. Giannis asked about the cracked court behind the school, about Malik's mom, about how he taught himself drills, about the notebook. Malik told him things he'd never said aloud before. Giannis listened without interrupting, nodding, occasionally reaching over to squeeze Malik's shoulder. Then Giannis stood and walked to a small locker on the side of the court. He returned holding a pair of brand-new sneakers, clean, bright, size matched. He handed them to Malik without ceremony. "These are yours now. Not because you asked, because you earned them." Malik stared at them. The laces glowed. "But more than shoes," Giannis continued. "I want you to come back here next week. There's a youth training camp I help run, not just for ball, for life. Coaches, mentors, teammates. I want you there. I want them to meet you." Malik's eyes stung. Giannis crouched beside him. "And if you're willing, write something, just a short piece. I want to read your words, not just for me, for the world. You said something important in your letter about how it feels to be invisible. I think people need to hear that." Malik nodded slowly. "You don't have to perform," Giannis said. "You just have to show up." When they left that day, Malik didn't walk. He floated. The court behind his school hadn't changed, but he had. Something had been planted inside him, a flicker of belief. A voice that no longer whispered, but hummed just loud enough to push back the silence. That night, he laced the new shoes, walked to the court like always, but this time when he dribbled, the ball felt different, alive, like it knew. And above the rim, the stars burned a little brighter. Because now, he wasn't just playing to survive. He was playing because someone had listened and believed. For the first time in a long time, Malik started to wake up before his alarm, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. The mornings had stopped feeling heavy. There was something waiting for him now, not just a cracked court or a journal full of secrets, but possibility. A sliver of light through a door he hadn't realized was even there. The following Monday, He walked through the doors of the Bucks youth facility wearing his new shoes. They weren't pristine anymore. He'd already broken them in on his home court, refusing to let them collect dust like trophies, but they were still bright, still a symbol of something bigger than him. The camp wasn't glamorous. There were no TV cameras, no crowd, no hype, just a handful of teens from across the city and a small team of coaches and mentors. Malik kept his head down at first. Old habits. He wasn't used to being seen in spaces like this, but people knew who he was. Not because he was famous, but because of the letter. Giannis had told them about him. "You're the kid who wrote that," one of the coaches said with a smile, clapping him on the back. "I've read it 3 times. At first, Malik wanted to disappear, but slowly, minute by minute, drill by drill, something inside him started to shift. When the coaches spoke, they looked him in the eye. When they gave feedback, it was specific, constructive, honest. He wasn't treated like a charity case or a symbol. He was a player, a person, someone who mattered. He trained harder than he ever had, not to prove anything, but because for the first time he believed there might actually be something worth chasing. On day 3 of the camp, one of the assistant coaches pulled him aside. "Don't try to be Giannis," he said, smiling. "He didn't become great by copying anyone. He became great by being unapologetically Giannis. You've got to find your own game." That night Malik sat on the edge of his bed, notebook in hand, shoes still laced. He didn't write a letter this time. He wrote a piece, a short story, half poem, half testimony. It didn't have a title. It didn't need one. It was about a boy who shot hoops in the dark because it was the only place he didn't feel invisible, about a boy who thought the world forgot him until one day it didn't. He printed it out, folded it twice, and brought it with him the next morning. At the end of the final day of camp, Giannis came in again, not for a show, not for press, just to see the kids, shake hands, talk. And when he got to Malik, he didn't say anything at first. He just looked at him like a man watching something grow that he'd planted with his own hands. "You brought it?" he asked. Malik nodded, pulling the folded page from his backpack. Giannis read it right there, standing in the middle of the gym, sneakers squeaking in the background, whistles echoing off the walls. As he reached the final paragraph, his lips pressed together. He looked up. "You wrote this like it's the end of the story," he said. "But it's not." That night, Giannis stood at a podium for his usual post-game press conference. He'd had a solid night. 27 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists. But when the reporters started firing questions, Giannis raised a hand. "Before we talk basketball," he said, "I want to share something." He pulled a folded page from his pocket, unfolded it, smoothed it against the mic stand. "This is from Malik," he said. "He's 15. He lives right here in Milwaukee. I won't say much. His words speak louder than mine." And then he read. Malik's words filled the room. Not just the room, but the broadcast, the airwaves, the algorithms. The video went viral in hours. Not because it was flashy, but because it was true. It cut through the noise like a clean jump shot in an empty gym. The story hit everywhere. News outlets, sports networks, book blogs, mental health organizations. Celebrities shared it. Teachers printed it. Players retweeted it. But for Malik, none of that mattered as much as what happened back home. His principal called him into the office, not to reprimand him, but to tell him how proud she was. His English teacher asked if he'd consider reading his work aloud in class. A non-profit offered him a scholarship to attend a summer writing program. A city official announced the old schoolyard court would be renovated, with new pavement, new hoops, lights for night play. They asked Malik to help design the new layout. One morning, a small team arrived to begin the work. Malik walked past the fence and saw something painted in bold white letters near the center line. "The Invisible Shot, in honor of Malik Evans." For a second, he didn't know how to feel. Gratitude? Embarrassment? Joy? All of it. Later that week, a reporter asked him what changed. He thought for a long time, then answered, "I didn't change. I just got heard. And that made me stop hiding." He wasn't a star yet. He didn't have a college offer. He didn't have it all figured out. But now he had a voice. He kept writing, kept practicing, kept showing up to that court even when no one was watching. Not because he needed an audience, but because he'd fallen in love with the process, the becoming. And every now and then a kid he didn't know would come up to him and say, "You're the one from the story, right?" And he'd nod, smile, ask the kid what they were dreaming about, because now he understood something Giannis had hinted at during that first conversation. The real win isn't the highlight or the headline, it's passing the ball forward, making sure the next kid doesn't feel as alone. So maybe you're reading this, wondering what it all means. Maybe you've got your own court, your own shoes that don't fit right, your own story no one seems to hear. That's okay. Keep writing, keep shooting, keep showing up. You never know who's watching, and you never know when that invisible shot might just change everything.